Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Liz Swain. I'm the business editor for the Shreveport Bossier Advocate, and I am joined today by three very interesting men who know a lot about what's happening in our local economy, in our state economy, and they are here to share that knowledge with us. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about. All you have to do is read the headlines, listen to the radio, listen to television, so much going on out there. I would like to thank Ochsner Health and Blue Cross Blue Shield for their sponsorship of The Outlook. And the state of Louisiana's economy certainly means as much to them as it means to all of us. If you're not a subscriber to the Shreveport Bossier Advocate, to our daily newsletter, to my twice-weekly business newsletter, I would encourage you to do that because honestly, being in the know now is more important than it ever has been. So let's get this party started, shall we? Sitting next to me is Justin Dixon.
Good afternoon.
It's great to have you.
Good to be here.
Justin is the CEO and the president of North Louisiana Economic Partnership. That is a primary economic development entity in North Louisiana that works very closely with Louisiana Economic Development. And he is generally one of the most plugged in people in any room that he walks into. Don't let him tell you otherwise. Douglas White, he is our numbers guy today, and everybody needs a numbers guy. Numbers are great if you can understand them, and he does. As an economist and the director of the LSUS Center for Business and Economic Research, Doug can tell us which numbers matter, why they matter, what they mean to us. And Adam Knapp. Adam has traveled to come to Shreveport Bossier today, and we do appreciate that. He is the CEO of Leaders for a Better Louisiana, and that is the entity that was created when the Committee of 100 for Louisiana and the Council for a Better Louisiana joined to put their combined power behind this push that we all need for initiatives that push not only policy reform, but also economic growth. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Justin,
Thank you.
I bet you can guess what we're going to start with, buddy.
Oh, God.
You know, here in North Louisiana, especially in North Louisiana, when you consider what's going on over in Richland Parish, the conversation now for more than a year has been about data centers, what they mean, what they bring, what the outcome will be. And I think there are a lot of questions that are still unanswered about all of that, but there are things obviously that we can share today. Now, I know that you and your team, who are very hardworking people, you don't just take what comes to you. You are always planning about what comes next. You're always thinking about what can we bring to Northwest and North Louisiana to bring more jobs, to bring more people, to bring more economic development. So when you lay out your economic development prospects for the next couple of years, Justin, how important are data centers to economic success for our area?
Well, great question. A lot of the unanswered questions are the questions that haven't been asked. The benefits that data centers could potentially bring to Northwest Louisiana. We get all the concerns, and I understand concerns.
And we'll talk about them.
Oh, well, why not? That's the whole thing anybody wants to talk about. Yeah. But the best way to answer this is kind of starting from an announcement we had 2 months ago and going back. SLB, we know them as Schlumberger up here. They announced an additional 600 jobs, and these are jobs paying $80,000 a year at the former GM facility, which before SLB moved into it 2 years ago, sat empty for 12 years basically. Those 600 jobs that they announced are in the data center industry. They're building cooling systems and digital infrastructure.
And they're using 2 million square feet.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. And so with this new announcement, they'll have over 1,200, 1,300 jobs out there, $80,000 a year in that data center space. Earlier in the year, there was some noise around Fiberbond. Fiberbond sold to Eaton Corporation. Eaton, large corporation, would not be investing for the short haul. They invest for the long haul. Fiberbond also, a couple of years back, made a huge expansion. Prolet, GE, an expansion 2 years ago, data center related. So, you know, outside of what you're alluding to, and I get it, we've been in the data center space for quite a while, and thank God for them.
So when I ask you how important data centers are, you actually answered it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much that they have to be located here, but the data centers that are being built nationwide are leading to growth in businesses that are already here.
Correct. And it's kind of like the automotive industry. You know, when the automotive industry comes, they build these manufacturing plants and the suppliers wrap around it. That's not the case with data centers. You know, you go to Dallas or you go to Atlanta and even back Virginia, there was not a lot of suppliers. And we're fortunate to have those that I've mentioned, along with Gordon Inc., Sabre Industries, and many others. And so if we were lucky enough to land a data center, we could have a ripple effect that none of us have really thought about, except for the numbers guy.
So there are potentially 3 data centers that are in development in Northwest Louisiana right now. We've got the one in West Shreveport that's already been approved. We've got one up along the state line north of Blanchard that they've got water agreements with the town of Blanchard. And then we've got 1,000 acres, give or take, in North Bossier, where it looks like the same company is developing all 3, or at least fronting all 3 of those. And I'm going to ask you a question. You may not be able to answer it, but you probably can shed some light on it. Given the amount of power that we have locally, that we can generate, that SWEPCO has access to, the amount of water that we have locally, how many data centers could locate here with the infrastructure that we have?
Right. It's a great question. And luckily, I don't have to figure that out. You know, these companies, when they come in, they go to the subject matter experts, the power companies, the water companies, to see what can be brought online, what can be supplied. And so it's ever changing. Technology is ever changing. The technology we have today will be different than we have in a year or two. And so I don't think there's a finite answer. I think with each opportunity, you know, we need to assess it, see what we can offer in terms of utilities, and take it from there. But I don't think if we were fortunate enough to land some, I don't think that would be the end of the game.
Doug, let's talk numbers. Because the numbers around data center construction are humongous, and the numbers around commercial real estate having to do with data centers, huge. As a matter of fact, when you look at the numbers of stocks, so many stocks and Wall Street and the Fortune 500 and all of that, is they're really pushing those stocks to levels that we haven't seen, NVIDIA and other companies that are involved. But data center construction spending is expected to rise 23% in 2026. Most of that commercial real estate segments, office, hotel, apartment, warehouse, they're projected to contract while data center is expanding. Again, AI has fueled the stock market, increases in the GDP. What are you seeing in terms of data center numbers that might cast some light locally or show us what we could expect?
Well, that's a great question. You know, I haven't really seen a whole lot in the numbers yet, mainly because we're still in the planning phase. You know, obviously, if we get those centers, there's going to be at least a short-term boom in construction jobs, and that's usually pretty good for the area. You know, I think that would have a bonus on our, you said retail and restaurants were going down. Well, if we get those short-term jobs, you know, you get secondary effects of workers going out, spending their money. So that should, you know, boost those sectors as well. But, you know, it's one of those things we are definitely seeing it drive the stock market. I think I read somewhere that 70 to 80% of the gain in the Dow Jones over the last year has been related to either chip makers or AI stocks. So you'd like to see that spread out more, you know, see it be broader disbursement of other companies. And, you know, the number that I think one of the big reasons we see some hesitation is that we're still dealing with the inflation that we saw, you know, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and people are worried that, you know, that's going to cause utility rates to go up, water rates to go up, and when people are already, you know, kind of stretched thin, that gives them a little hesitation. But at the same time, maybe it'll expand, you know, the utility market here. Maybe we'll get better service. Maybe we'll get, you know, more backup service, not have as many power outages, that kind of thing.
Adam, I don't want you to have to be the Debbie Downer on all of this. You're very excited, and there was a press release, I think, that went out a couple of weeks ago talking about the magical 2 million jobs mark in the state of Louisiana. And data centers, there's no doubt, will bring some jobs, and then those other businesses, certainly during construction, will bring a lot of temporary jobs. But do you have any concerns about the feeling by some that we're putting too many eggs in the data center basket?
This is great. I think the project we did,
In Louisiana?
the report that we did.
In Louisiana was your question?
Yes.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so right now there's one egg in the basket. Just want to make sure everybody's counting at home.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a sad Easter. Please.
But it's a really big egg.
Okay, please.
So the three biggest projects in Louisiana so we did a kind of regions, I should say, that have activity right now. One of them is really being driven by a significant data center project that's already moving forward. The second big one that's been talked about and is moving forward in South Louisiana, just outside of the Baton Rouge area in St. Francisville is also moving forward. But those two are the ones that you're kind of alluding to. There's a lot of talk about other potential projects, but those two are really the ones driving activity. The bigger question, I think, is it is rare to have that happening in North Louisiana and in South Louisiana combined with two very large liquefied natural gas projects being built in Lake Charles. At the same time that Hyundai Steel is building a very large manufacturing facility in Donaldsonville, right down the road from CF Industries is building a new hydrogen production facility, ammonia production facility. It's really the combination of those things all happening at the same time is when you have a kind of an industrial construction workforce that's migratory and sometimes will migrate up to Louisiana to build things, up to North Louisiana, or move down to South Louisiana to build things, that we're going to be really pulling the labor force from elsewhere to build it across the state at the same time. So the report that we did, I think it was in September, looked at kind of the arc of those projects that are kind of the mega projects that got announced in the last 13 or 14 months. At their peak, at the end of this year or early next year in 2027, you'll have somewhere around 21,000 industrial construction jobs on those specific sites cumulatively at that peak, which was an estimate. And the total state industrial construction workforce is around 86,000 people already employed, mind you, in industrial construction. And so the big question we were asking was how is that going to get sourced? And how does that spread out around the state? Looking back at the last big wave of construction activity was 2013 to 2017, when low natural gas prices because of shale drove massive expansion across the entire Gulf Coast. What happened then was Louisiana's population grew by about 60,000 people at the same time that the industrial construction workforce in Louisiana grew by about 30,000 people. So we saw migration into Louisiana and a huge addition to folks that were classified in industrial construction. I think we should expect that's about what's about to happen is we're about to see this influx of folks that are out there to build it. At the same time as efforts by the state, community leaders to make sure that our community colleges, our four-year schools, our trade schools are all kind of working in a unified way to try to meet as much of the demand from existing state workers as possible. It's a great moment to try to be in this space if you're trying to help upskill folks into new opportunities that we have this happening. The other thing that's really interesting is LED, this was just 6 projects, mind you, 6 projects. LED announced a huge amount of activity last year. We went back and added up how many deals happened in 2025 across the state compared to 2024. The state's net numbers of announced new jobs in Louisiana in 2024 was about 2,000 to 3,000, give or take. Last year it was somewhere between 8,000 and 9,000, just the direct announced jobs by the projects that announced last year. So we're in a wave of just heightened activity across the landscape. It is not just in data centers. Largely, I think we have to think about this as a surge of activity in a broad variety of sectors.
Can I piggyback on that?
You sure can.
So, a couple of things. What the last part he just said, we are on just about every publication when it comes to economic development. We were not in the game up until several years back. You and I've had this conversation. We took orders, but we weren't in the game of economic development. We are in the game of economic development, both on a local, regional, and specifically on the state level. So as we do these projects, a lot of these people we're engaged with, whether it be data center or otherwise, are the same consultants and companies that bring other manufacturer opportunities here. And as we perform on this local, state, regional level, we will have that opportunity to perform going forward. And the other thing, the construction jobs. I never have grown up where construction jobs are part of an economic development project. It's part of a benefit.
Right.
But, I never have liked that because you're looking at a 12 to 24 month build out. Except for when you've got a 3 to 5 to 7 year build out. And, then if we treat them right, and we're nice to them, and we show them where our good food places are, maybe some of those will stay here. And so that's one way we can grow the economy. And the last thing, talking about, just 1 or 2 data centers and being relatively new. In 1997, Alabama had the craziest idea in the world that they were going to recruit an automotive supplier, an automotive company, Mercedes. And then they went after the second one. Everybody goes, oh my God, there goes the way we can't farm anymore, we can't do steel anymore, what's going to happen? And if they would have stopped with Mercedes, they have never gotten to Hyundai, or never gotten to Honda, or never gotten to Toyota, or never gotten to Kia, never gotten to Polaris. So it's kind of where we are in the industry now. I can't stop and focus on just this lane. We've got to focus on all kinds of opportunities. But if you're not playing in it, you're missing a great opportunity.
Are there other opportunities out there that you're focusing on?
There are. We're seeing a lot still in advanced manufacturing, be it steel related or whatnot, materials related. Starting to see some defense related opportunities. It's slowed down a little bit, I would say. I don't know what you're seeing across the state, but talking to my peers in other states. But it's still a pretty robust pipeline right now.
I mean, there's no doubt there are benefits to data centers, but there are also concerns, which you're very well aware of. You went to some of those community meetings.
My friends.
With West Shreveport, the data center there. People had a lot of different worries about the unknown. And I do want to talk to you about the worries of the Blanchard area data center. The folks who depend on Caddo Lake for not only their water, but recreation and maybe their towns are concerned about potentially a data center drawing too much water out of Caddo Lake. The data center there, much like the one in West Shreveport, has agreed that any new infrastructure that's needed for water, they will pay for. But what I've not been able to see in any of the documents is who pays for the ongoing maintenance. We all know if you put a 65,000 foot, 24-inch water line, and that's what they're willing to lay to get the water to their facility, that somebody is going to not call before they dig. And they're going to break the water line, or the water line is going to break because it's going to get down to 22 degrees for a week or something along those lines. So do you have any idea, Justin, just based on your discussions with the data centers, are they going to be paying for maintenance of the facilities that they are funding as well, the infrastructure?
So a couple of things. You've alluded several times to the data center that's going here or here or here.
The proposed
So
data
I'm right
center.
in the middle of some negotiations, and I have not seen any signed documents. That's one. And deals aren't done till they're done. I had a day, just the most beautiful day ever, about 2013, and I lost 3 deals in 8 hours.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that was 2 years worth of work.
Right.
So you're always going to the end. So, these users have contracts in place where they will pay substantial, not diminished rates, not negotiated rates, but normal market rates for the utilities that they use. And, that revenue is what's used to, one, pay for any upgrades needed. Now, most of those upgrades that they're doing, that they would do, they pay up front. Now, the maintenance is what you're talking about. That's where it'd be covered. Kind of like we're all covering maintenance every day with our water bills of the system and everything. But we're hoping if we could get a big user that it would suppress some of the cost, and that's what we've seen in other areas, on increases in utilities, be it power, water, sewer, whatnot. Georgia, for one, has put a moratorium on any increases for the next 3 years for any of their power because they have so much money from the usages. So all of it valid concerns, But these companies, mind you, there's some of them that are real and some of them aren't real. And that's where a lot of the challenges come from history.
And you had told me that before.
Yeah, from Elios Motors, right?
Right. Oh, everybody knows it.
Yeah. And so, we make it a point to recruit companies that can handle the responsibilities of moving into an area, much like Amazon did right up the road here. Same concerns back then. And everything up on North Market is getting better by the day. So I would expect the same if we were lucky enough to land a good one.
We're going to talk about incentives for a minute. I know you love talking about incentives. They've been used for many, many years.
Yep.
They've been used to lure important industry to the state. I mean, there's no doubt. But obviously, again, the data centers are bringing those discussions to the fore. Why are incentives so important? And we've all heard this story before, but how has the process of giving them changed over the years?
I delivered my daughter at 22 weeks in 6 days, and she spent 128 days in the NICU at Ochsner. From there, we had to see a wide range of specialists, and to have them all here with us locally has helped me to be able to work and take care of her at the same time.
Just dealing with a child, you really want to have the best care and you want it quickly. So for that, it's provided a lot of relief for us.
In December of 2011, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. There's an initial shock, I guess, but instead of turning it into a verdict, I considered it a challenge. As it turned out, Blue Cross Blue Shield, it was amazing. I was able to focus in on getting well, as opposed to wondering how I was going to pay for it. I'm Laura. I'm from New Orleans. I am cancer-free for 13 years and looking forward to so many more.
And Adam, if you want to jump in on this, please feel free.
Please.
Or Doug.
Please jump away.
Adam's like, no.
I think the best way to show the example, and I told him, and I hadn't had time to look it up, but it's probably the University of, East Iowa Junior College's football team that decided not to go into NIL. Okay? They didn't make it last night to the game, right? Miami and Indiana made it. And so that's how the game's played. That's how the game's always been played. We run economic impact analysis on any project that we do. And if it's not a benefit for both, not just the company, but for the community and the taxpayers, why do it? And so incentives are part of the game. If you're not negotiating incentives with companies, you're not in the game, and we know what that looks like because we didn't do it for years. And so it's part of it. But if it's beneficial to the community and to the local taxpayers, then why wouldn't you do it? I don't understand the answer there.
Have you ever been in a situation where it's a race to the bottom?
Absolutely.
And then what do? Opt out?
You establish the rules on the front end. You go to the elected officials, which we count on, and I'm very proud of the way 90% of them acted this go around. And you say, there's risk here. This is a startup company. This is a startup company that doesn't have any money. And so you find out a way to mitigate that risk. If you don't, you're short-lived in economic development or an elected official. And so you have to acknowledge what that risk is, what the company is, what the potential is, and then apply the incentive as be.
Adam, you've worked with incentives before in multiple of your jobs. Is there a way to make incentives available while also making it a transparent process? I think a lot of people are concerned because they hear about it on the backside. Oh, someone got 20 years off the tax rolls, or whatever the case may be. Or are these things that just by their nature have to be done in silence?
I think largely they do, and that's the trust that is put upon organizations that work in economic development is to operate in good faith and be held accountable to that trust that is expected and required. In the work that Justin just described, that is a practice that is pretty common across the state, as you're looking to try to make sure that you're only using an incentive if it's necessary for that project to occur. and then eschewing it otherwise. And that's a delicate and difficult balance. We actually had an example in Baton Rouge when I was at kind of the equivalent of Justin's organization down there with Amazon to try to help a project happen, but only in a very specific way and at a very specific location, and only use an incentive for that location to come about. It was a very specific goal that the community had to redevelop an old mall that had been a blighted eyesore in the community for quite a long time. And so in that example, it was a tool that was designed in a very specific way for a specific site. And we clearly told the company, we don't need to incentivize this to happen in our region if you're not going to go to this location. Because you're likely going to build it somewhere in our region, and we're happy to help you find the site, but you don't need an incentive to do that. And so that was the unique nature of that tool, and I think every project has its own specific different parameters. The other thing I think that's important to know in Louisiana is I think in the last few years, you're seeing a shift in how we think about incentives, that the tools that we use sometimes are being taken away to say that tool is no longer necessary or should be reduced in value as a priority to get the tax rate down. And what Louisiana did in the last 18 months is substantially remove some incentives and tax credits and exemptions in order to lower the corporate and personal income tax rates, with the view that that's going to drive as much population change in Louisiana or corporate decision making as a tool that is a targeted and directed incentive. And I think that you're going to see that debate continue to happen in Louisiana, that lawmakers are trying to decide, is it better to use a targeted tool looking for specific industries or projects that we don't have versus doing something that's general across the board for the entire tax structure. But I think that's already happening somewhat in what you're seeing in tax policy. The other big thing is that the state made a big change to prioritize incomes over just quantity of jobs. And so the big change on the primary incentive tool that a lot of companies are now going to be using is to put it on the parish level wage is the determining factor of the value of the incentive you're going to get. So that it's pushing for higher level earnings in the community above the prevailing community wages, which is going to be hopefully helpful to drive up incomes across the state to look for projects with higher income opportunities for our Louisiana citizens to be able to take advantage of. So it's been fascinating to see how the incentive landscape has shifted in the last few years.
And Justin, one of the things that I've been concerned about is if you offer an incentive to one company and it becomes the standard almost, because if one gets it, everyone will ask for it. I mean, it's just human nature. You got it, I should get it. Yeah. How do you turn the others down that you don't think should get it or that don't? Is there a structure that you set up that said you get this if you have this many jobs or this much capital investment?
One of the main concerns I have is bringing jobs and investment to the area, and that's for the board members in here that hold me accountable to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to do that more so, too. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, it's a public record of the incentive that we passed through the Finance Authority.
Yeah, we've seen the term sheet on that one.
Okay, have you seen the one that Meta got?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Which one's more favorable towards the taxpayers? The one that was passed in the Finance Authority.
Yep.
So I guess I would have to say that just because one gets it doesn't necessarily mean you have to give it to the other ones. Mm-hmm. It's a changing landscape. And so, as Adam said, you've got to address each project with its needs, weigh it against the incentive, and make sure it changes. We don't do cookie cutter. We don't do one size fits all. We've got that now in the state. It's called ITEP. It's a statutory 80% abatement that basically the governor can grant to anybody they want. And so I'm not a big fan of that. We use it in certain situations, but I'm not a big fan of that. And so I think you look at each project individually, look at the way the benefits against the risk, and you handle it that way.
Let's talk about the economy for a minute. Doug, I'm going to bring you back in on this, okay? Because there are a lot of people out there who are saying, man, the economy's great, the economy's great. And then there are a whole lot of people who are saying, I don't feel it. It doesn't seem that way to me. When I go to the grocery store, I am spending more. When I'm getting my insurance bill, it's higher. Maybe my rent's going up. So Politico did a great job recently of doing a story to show you that there's a methodology of collecting these numbers that can lead, not the numbers to lie, but the outcome or what you draw from them to change depending on the numbers that you're receiving. And so, did you have the opportunity, at one point a couple of years ago, you said to me, sometimes numbers lie.
Right. So, you know, I think you said lie was the wrong word, and I agreed with that. But what I think we need, especially as the economy's changed, we need to do a deeper look instead of just throwing numbers out. Oh, great, unemployment's, you know, only 4.6%. Okay, well, we've gotten older as a workforce. You'd kind of expect unemployment naturally to come down because unemployment tends to be higher when you're young because you're switching jobs more, you're gaining skills. If you're older, you tend to stay at your job. You don't switch as much. So as the workforce has gotten older, we'd kind of expect that number to come down. Also, we talk about unemployment. Have to know how that's defined, right? So you have to be actively looking for work.
Right.
And you have to, it just counts, do you have a job? It doesn't take into account,
If
are
it's
you
a
working
part-time
part-time
job?
or full-time? You know, if you want to work full-time, but you're only part-time, you're probably not happy. So again, you could go out there and talk about unemployment's 4.6%, or you could look at the U6 unemployment, and now you're going to say it's 8.7%, 8.9%, and that's where we're taking into account workers who are employed part-time or workers who are discouraged and aren't even looking for work. So, you know, there's nuances to these numbers. You know, the jobs report comes out. Used to be that we had to have 150,000 jobs, 200,000 jobs each month to break even. Well, I was at a conference a couple months ago, and somebody from the Fed came and said, I no longer know how to read the jobs report. He said between Trump cracking down at the border and the deportations, and some, you know, whether it's through ICE or it's self-deportation, what we're seeing is that there's estimates at the Fed that now that number's come down to, if we have 25,000, and if you look at the margin of error, it might even be negative. So that when you see the jobs report come out, you know, it used to be, oh, everybody knows this number's no good. That means that we should be concerned. Now we don't necessarily know how to interpret all those numbers. So I think people need to do a much deeper dive and look at the underlying ways we're collecting that data. Now the other problem is, you know, the census will tell you the jobs report, they've had trouble with that report. Unfortunately, the scientific advisory board that was working on that, Trump got rid of a couple months ago. Good news is they're still meeting in private to try and give advice to the census in the future. But again, as the economy's changed, as people have gotten more online, you get more annoying phone calls, more annoying spam messages. You know, sometimes people aren't as quick to respond to surveys that they used to, so we might also have trouble with the underlying numbers that way as well.
How important is it to have numbers that you can depend on?
So it
What if you
drives
don't
me
have them?
crazy. I will tell you, you know, you're talking about growing the population. I was going to put in there, believe it or not, the decennial census is only 4 years from now. So this is a great time to, if not grow the population, at least stop the shrinkage, because 10 years ago, or 6 years ago, we were right on that edge of losing a representative. We're probably going to be in that same boat again. So if we could grow the population and prevent that from happening, that would be really nice. The other thing, I think I read, don't quote me on the exact number, but for each person we miss in the census, there's like $2,000 attached to that person. So over the, you know, decennial, that would be $20,000 for each person that we miss in the census. So again, not having good numbers, that, you know, that affects us. Schools decisions are made, looking at census data. How many people are here? So how many, are we going to need more classrooms? Are we going to need less classrooms? There's billions, if not trillions of dollars of decisions made on this underlying data. And what we're seeing is that we've degraded some of the collections we have for getting this data. I'll throw this out that the amount of money we spend collecting the data is less than what the Pentagon spends on coffee. So maybe we could have the Pentagon just, you know, everybody bring your own coffee to work one day, and we could fund this to get, you know, better better data that these million, billion, and trillion dollar decisions are being made on.
And then just very quickly, did you have something that you wanted to say? Very quickly on inflation. Inflation may have slowed, but this is inflation on top of the inflation that we've already seen.
Right. So I still think one of the reasons, everyone calls it the vibe recession, and there's arguments to be made for that or not made for that. People are still angry and upset with the inflation. Granted, we've seen about a year now of somewhere between 3.5%, 2.5% inflation, but we saw an 18%, or we saw, it got up to 9%, so we had 18 months where it was really high, and what that basically did is inflate everything up to 18%, 22%, and so now those prices aren't going down. They're just going up at the more acceptable rate of 2.6%, 3%, which again is higher than the Fed's target. The Fed claims that they want 2%, and what we're seeing is we're not close to 2%. And so, food prices are up 22% from 4 years ago. Everybody goes to the grocery store, if not once a week, multiple times a week. So that's that kind of slap in the face every time you go to check out that, man, prices were so much lower 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and that's why I still think that's one of the largest reasons people aren't happy with the economy.
And even if you're not going to the grocery store as often, you're going to restaurants and they're buying things. They're buying the same inflated food. Right. So you're getting it one way or the other.
That gets passed through. Also, because of the high inflation, that's caused interest rates to go up, right? So, if you're looking to buy a house, you're paying 6.5% or so. 5 years ago, you could have got it for 4, maybe even 3. So that makes you unhappy. If you have credit card debt, your credit card interest rate's higher. So, that inflation has caused prices everywhere to go up, and people are still paying for it. And they're going to still pay for it.
Healthcare prices continue to go up as well. Insurance continues to go up. It feels like, at least it feels like. Let's talk for a minute about healthcare, Adam, because that is a big economic engine in the state of Louisiana. A lot of people are employed in the healthcare industry. I had an interview a couple of weeks ago with Mr. Calicod, who's the CEO of Shreveport's Ochsner LSU Health, and he was talking to me about the headwinds that all hospitals are facing, all medical centers, and it has to do with Medicaid, what's going to happen there, Medicare, prices going up there, costs going up, insurance, costs going up, rural health care issues. He was talking about healthcare insurers. If they don't have enough money to pay for something, they're coming to the hospitals and trying to, get them to share the pain. And he said, and for his medical center alone, the amount of write-off per year was hundreds of millions of dollars. So I said, how long can you continue to do this? I mean, what are you not able to do if you're having to write off this much money? So are you talking to healthcare providers around the state? I know it's a very important job creator for you and for the state.
Yeah, so just our organization does not really get into health policy, health cost issues as a matter of course. Two things we've looked at on healthcare. One is just to understand where it sits in a demand of jobs right now, or workers right now, in a landscape I was mentioning earlier. The forecast hiring in healthcare remains the highest sector across all categories of potential hiring and positions. And that has not changed, even as we've seen a surging amount of industrial construction and craft skill worker demand. So it's been a fascinating landscape to watch. So two things we're thinking about on that. One is I think the state is increasingly trying to make sure that our 2-year and 4-year programs are integrated to look at demand needs and try to make sure that there is a matchup across the state to continue to invest in new programs. A new nurse and allied health program just opened in Baton Rouge, for example, that we're familiar with. Watching those things as they shift has been fascinating to us. The second thing, and it's going to be a little bit early news to announce, but we're going to put out a press release tomorrow that we think part of our job as an organization is to connect people across the state. We have a program called Leadership Louisiana. Many of folks might be alumni of Leadership Louisiana. It's in its 38th year as a program. It's never had a vertical sector that we allowed folks or introduced folks to go a little bit deeper into. So later this year, our intention is to launch our first vertical program for Leadership Louisiana, and hopefully we'll be able to do something to connect people across the healthcare sector. We're going to call it the Leadership Louisiana Health Fellows, and it will be a cohort of folks that can come together, and if you're in healthcare in South Louisiana, North Louisiana, Southwest Louisiana, we want to make sure that you have a chance to see the health assets of the state, the nursing and allied health programs of the state, the medical schools of the state, the research institutes of the state. But as much as anything, what Leadership Louisiana has always been is a connective thread for leaders wanting to better know the state itself as well as each other. And I think if we're going to talk about cost, or if we're going to talk about health outcomes, which is what we hopefully the conversation will be about, whether we're getting healthier as a state as well. Those are the factors we hope that we can spur more conversations through this effort, much as we've seen Leadership Louisiana do over its 38-year run. So,
Gentlemen, this is a fascinating conversation. We are coming to a close. I would like to give each of you the opportunity, if there's something that we have missed or that you'd like to draw people's attention to. Justin, you were talking at the beginning about we really have seen in 2025 some big wins in Northwest Louisiana. But is there anything you'd like to close us out with?
No, I think, the problems we pointed out, and we've pointed out many, we've got to grow our way out of it. We have to. It's the only way. Grow it through population. Where's population go? They're going to go where the opportunity is. These aren't $200,000, $300,000 a year people that can go where they want to. And so we've got to provide the opportunity. The way you do that is create the climate, work hard to get them here, and then take care of them once they're here. Mm-hmm. And I think we're showing that we can win. I think both on the elected officials, as there's 6 people in here that have worked on a specific project with me, and there's probably 600. And so we've got the skills to get in the game and win the game up here. I think that's the only way we're going to grow ourselves out of it, is to recruit and to help the companies that are here grow. And I feel like we've got the team in place in many situations, including these 2, and we just got to keep doing it.
Any closing remarks?
Yeah, I'd agree. Growth is the key, and honestly, I feel like for the first time in a long time, there seems to be positive momentum. There seems to be optimism. I think we did this a few years ago, and we talked, right as we were getting out of COVID, and we talked about how COVID, there felt like there was a real sense of positive momentum downtown, and then COVID hit, and it just kind of stopped that. And I think maybe we're finally past that COVID hangover, that it feels like there's that momentum again, that things seem to be happening in the city, positive things happening in the city, that people seem to be optimistic. Sure, we still have problems that we need to fix, but I feel like people are focusing more on the good, and how do we promote the good stuff happening here? How do we get our wins out, as you said, and brag about the wins and make them bigger? And so that's kind of nice. So, especially when we talk about the vibe recession, I kind of feel like there's a positive vibe going on here. So maybe we're going to buck the trend and not have that vibe recession, but have a positive expansion, a vibe expansion.
And Adam?
So you alluded to this earlier, Liz, but Louisiana, in the fact that it crossed 2 million jobs and has stayed there. For those of you who don't subscribe to our newsletters, what fascinating was we had crossed 2 million back 10 years ago and hadn't been able to hold it. We held it for about 4 months and then slipped, and we weren't able to stay at 2 million jobs as a state. We crossed that in, I want to say it was May, and have now been at that level as a state for 7 months. At a point when the amount of activity in the state is increasing, but for some national or international disruption, or health-related disruption or weather-related disruption, it seems like this state is on a growth curve. The thing that I would say is the pace of growth is still too slow. And so having gotten there, we have been crawling to get to that point. And while it looks like we're on an upward trajectory and potentially into record territory here shortly in terms of the total amount of jobs in the state, the rate at which we're growing is still completely different than what we saw in the 60s and 70s as a state when we were growing between 30 and 50% every decade. And that's fascinating just to keep in mind is the rate of growth that was possible at the time when our state is kind of at one of its kind of apex levels of growth. That's the kind of growth that we've seen across the South in some states that grew, as much as 15% over the last decade. So I don't think we should be satisfied with a great year. We need to see a great decade, and that's why I think continue to be in the game and being aggressive as regions and communities in the work of helping to attract jobs to our state is going to be the thing that continues to drive overall economic performance. And that vibe perception maybe is real true expansion, and folks get excited about it.
Well, we started out our conversation talking about data centers. We're going to end talking about artificial intelligence.
Why not?
And there have been a lot of conversations in Northwest Louisiana about AI in our artist community and in other places. People wondering what's going to come, what it's going to mean to them. Is it going to change their jobs? Are they going to lose their jobs because of AI? All kinds of worries and concerns because it's just so early. It's just so new. I'd like each of you to give me one word of your reaction when I say artificial intelligence.
Thank God.
Okay, that's 2 words.
That probably sums it up. I don't know what to think about AI.
That's fair.
Yeah. So obviously
Uncertain?
Uncertain.
And Adam?
Wild new landscape. It's a wild new landscape.
It's the wild, wild west, a strange new world, however you want to say it, right? Well, maybe we'll have more to talk about on AI next year.
Great.
And so, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. You've done a wonderful job as always. And I want to, again, thank you for your perspective. And he came loaded for bear. Look, he brought like a whole bunch of paper.
I didn't
and
even get to.
He was writing on it the whole time. Every time we said something about data center, there was some kind of scribble going on. I think it was just an intimidation factor. To our studio audience, thank you so much for being here. To all of you who are watching, wherever you are, thank you for joining us. And remember that this is just a little bit of news that's going on locally. We here at the Shreveport Bossier City Advocate we're working 365 days a year to bring you news, and all of it is compelling and interesting and has a lot to do with your wallets and your jobs and your opportunities. And so please join us and read our daily newsletter, and I would love for you to subscribe to my business newsletter twice a week. But we are out there and we are gathering all that news for you. And thank you again to Ochsner Health, to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and let's go out and have a wonderful 2026.
Look forward to it.
Yeah. See you again next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.